We got Brother Larry who's going to moderate for us. He's with Fathers and Families and did a lot of work in the city through business.
Amen. Yeah, good to see you. It's all right. It's good.
All right, all right. Yeah, so he's going to moderate, and I'll let them introduce themselves. And you already heard enough about Inyo, but then Cliff is on the panel as well, and a great business owner here in the city, runs a life insurance company and also a firefighter. But they can share more details about themselves. Larry, it's your show.
All right. Thank you, brother. Appreciate this. This is a great brother right here, Brother Anthony Beverly. Love working with him. Love his heart. One of my favorite psalmists wrote this. We ain't meant to survive because it's a setup. That's psalmist is Tupac. For those who don't know, it is a system, right? We need to talk about systemic barriers, economic, legal, institutional, and so I want to call on you, gentlemen, to share with us your thoughts around what barriers, systemic barriers, are most important that we need to overcome.
Well, barriers, I think they are created and manufactured by people that make a lot of money off of the oppressed, the unfortunate poor. I think one of the things, and we have to accept the fact that crime, and I tell everybody I'm a criminal expert, I'm a crime expert. I lived in North Philly, and I've been a criminal defense attorney for 30 plus years. And living in one of the worst neighborhoods in the country, and then having many of those people come by, it is created. It's not so much oftentimes that and we blame, a lot of times we blame these young black men for being criminals, and it's hard to fathom. You have to go through your head, how do you create a criminal? Or they're doing all these bad things, but those bad things, like somebody just said, generate a lot of money. And the money that they pull, so, and we did some research, I did some research, and we asked AI and everything, we did all this research, and crime is necessary. We have to accept that. But we don't have to accept, we just have to accept the fact that it exists, but we can change it. But right now, and with what we call data policing, it's going to be maintained. And I think a lot of what we have to deal with is that structure, that structure we have in terms of crime. And I don't think the black community understands how important crime. We know that it's detrimental to our communities, and we see the effects, but we don't see the underlying economics of it with other people. How much money they draw out of our community, and on with these what used to be called domestic cases, and then they got what I call government sponsored type crimes. That's drugs and guns. They're not going anywhere, and that's why I got on my not guilty shirt. We don't want to talk about that yet. But guns, drugs, crime, all these are institutions, and they are here to stay until we break it down.
Yeah, I like that when you talk about crime being necessary. So, there's this old phrase, crime pays, right? Crime pays literally. I mean, so if we look at and others call the prison industrial complex, this is the reason why prisons are privatized, right? They are businesses. If you have a business, you have to have what? Customers. So as long as the prisons are privatized, I promise you they're going to have customers, because crime literally pays. Mr. Johnson.
I think we have to take our hat off and critically think about this, that nothing in America happens without a model for it. So there is a best practice model for everything in America. When I went through the fire academy, there were firefighters from all over the world in Emmitsburg, Maryland, and they were teaching them the best practice model for firefighting. I went to different cities as a commander, and I realized there's a best practice model for drug dealing. There's a best practice model for creating a drug dealer. I had the pleasure of meeting with the real Freeway Rick Ross at a conference. And I asked him, I said, did you realize that you were the best practice model for drug dealing after you, America duplicated that in 5 or 6 different major cities? He said, when I was selling drugs, I was functionally illiterate. I wasn't dumb. I was illiterate. I couldn't read or write. He said, I had no idea that Blondone, who was bringing the drugs in, was working for the CIA. And that I fit the best model, hungry, intelligent. I could count numbers well. I said, did you realize how much money you had at one time? He said, I had so much money, I gave away the 20s and all that. And I had houses. He said, I had to teach myself to read in prison to get out, because I taught myself to read. And when I found out that I was set up, I got my freedom. But before I could get all my freedom, I had to give them all my money back. Every bit of it. I said, how did they know? He said, they knew exactly where my money was. I thought I was hiding it. It wasn't hidden. So there is a best practice model for that. So that means it is institutionalized. In this country, institutionalizes racism, and it will gladly institutionalize our children into their model. Because what does America need? They need people that are intelligent to work at McDonald's. They need people who will sacrifice themselves for money, items. They create it through music. They create it through the public food system, right? The best thing you can do to help with this systemic part is to educate your children at home against what they're going to learn at school at times. Amen. So there is a best practice model for it. So yes, it is institutionalized, and we can't be naive anymore.
So much to unpack there. Love the fact that he taught himself to read. You know, Frederick Douglass wrote about teaching himself to read. Education is liberation. Yes. Love what Brother Ralph said. We need to really understand what education is. It was illegal to teach black folk to read. There was a reason. It was law. It was law, right? You broke the law if you taught us to read. And then the CIA years later has come along and finally admitted, they were the ones who flooded our neighborhoods with crack. This was not an accident. They did this on purpose. The CIA has admitted that they have done it, that they did it on purpose. So it is a system. Also want to talk about, again, another aspect of mental health. There's an internal part and an external part. The external part is lack of access, right? We just don't have a lot of the centers, and we see what's going on now with the government coming down hard on anything involving whether it's medical insurance or facilities and all of that. So that's the external problem, access. The internal problem, even though I think it's getting better, is there's still a stigma, especially among black folk, around seeking mental and emotional health. And so that's a problem. Again, the sense I get is it's less of a problem, but I don't have a problem saying I've got a therapist, black woman therapist, God bless her, right? And we need to do more of that. So can we talk about, what are the strategies to overcome these two barriers that we have?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to think about is a mass, and therapists. I don't have no problem with therapists, therapy. But what I do think, what we need in our community, and not only in this community, but across the country, is some type of way, if they can teach, I don't know how you take therapy and propagandize it and make it for the masses. One of the problems that I see with America, and why we have a lot of issues, we always have issues, but when Biden, the pandemic, COVID, after it ended, this country just said, oh, good, we can go back to work. He didn't take into effect, and the government should have, because there are a lot of young people, particularly young black kids, that all they did during the whole time of COVID is on their phones. White kids had other things to do, but black kids didn't have no money to do nothing. And that phone, not only black kids, but all those young people, all they did was look at the phones and look at TV. But most of us older people, we watch movies and TV. They were on their phone, right? So, and we needed this from some type of therapy, mass therapy, to bring everybody out of that whole, just to say it hasn't affected nobody, and they're we going back to work. Like COVID did not affect people. It did. It really, some people still don't leave the house. Some people still don't like the church. There was a significant trauma. And what we did not do, which we should have done, is had some type, the government should have created some type of therapeutic program to bring people, find out where people have been at, and especially with the kids. Because I know they almost cannot live. And they make us adults almost the same way. We almost have to have a phone. With the society, they've decided, well, we can make money off the phones only if people own them, and we can advertise, so let's just keep people on them. So that's my whole thing in terms of creating this mental health. We have to create it in a massive, some type of mass therapy, and call it, that everybody can be a part of if they want to be a part of it, and give it to them sometimes when they don't want to be a part of it. You understand what I'm saying? A lot of young people, a lot of people don't want to deal with therapy.
Yeah, it's crucially important.
So I just think that we need some mass therapy. Like the whole, I don't know what you do. I protect people. I deal with drugs and guns. I don't know about therapy, but no, that's why I see it.
I completely agree. It's just so critically important. And yeah, you mentioned kind of by reference social media. There's a young white woman who just won a major legal judgment against Meta, the company that owns Facebook, because she was stuck on this. And we need to understand that these companies, they hire experts in what we call PSYOPs, psychological operations, to get us addicted to this. This is not an accident, right? The same people, they hire the same kind of people that the tobacco companies hire to get us addicted to smoking, right? These campaigns, they do this because it's all about the almighty dollar. I think the OJ's talked about for the love of money, right? That's right. Brother Johnson.
I agree with both of you, and I definitely agree with it is propaganda as well, in that when white children are getting exposed to things that may lower their self-esteem and put them in a situation where they feel inferior, the community comes up against it, right? We can't talk about slavery and our ancestors being bad to the black folks. We can't make our children feel inferior or bad or like they're more savage than their counterparts. We have allowed the propaganda machine to impact our children at an early age. And because of that, we feel like as a community, I remember growing up and listening to when rap music transitioned from positive black to more gangster rap, the term indestructible Negro. I'm the type of brother that's built to last, right? And at some point, we didn't realize the psychological impact on it, but we're facing it right now with the guns and the drugs. We're facing it. I asked a question earlier today, how do we go from Fred Hampton, Stokely Carmichael, Dr. King in their late teens and early 20s being so well respected and intellectual to a 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old person, a 25-year-old man, not having the wherewithal or the political acumen that these people had back then with no cell phones, no social media. We can look at the world in any day, any time that we want to. We can get on our phone and we can see what's going on in China and anywhere in the world, and our kids are focused on what little Shicey's doing in their 20s. So I think we do have a propaganda machine that's working against us, and it does impact our mental health. And I think there are some post-traumatic urban syndrome going on in our community that we have to deal with. Trauma. And the thing is, with that syndrome, we can all have post-traumatic things that happen to us, but it's not until it becomes repetitive that it becomes the syndrome and you can't get out of it. We have to find a way to get out of it, and that's through propaganda. If it's through understanding the system, it does need to be en masse, and we have to recognize it and we have to address it.
No, real quick.
Yes, sir.
There is a book called Weathering. Miss Williams is here. She's the one that told me about weathering. There's a book called Weathering where it talks about not only does the slaves,
Post-traumatic
the trauma slave thing, but also our environment and it affects us and the children. It really affects the children, how they grow up, or the stress of being black, and particularly these little YNs. YNs know they're not liked and they're rejected by everybody and everyone. They're a very isolated group, and I'm sure you all that work with young people know that but they're not as dumb as we think. I met one that could talk, and I don't mean that would talk. I had a YN that I don't mean to say that in a negative way, but he could talk. He could express himself. And what he told me, he let me in that world real, because most of the time they won't say nothing, particularly people my age. They don't talk to me. But he know, I know they don't like me. That's why we don't particularly like, and they're making fun of it. They said, when we get 10, and first of all, I gotta tell you what, this is the definition of a YN. I asked him the definition. He said, 13 to 17, 18, angry about everything, has a gun, and will shoot you. He said, it sounds about right to me. That was my definition. Now, with that definition, we do have a problem. And he said, when we get together, about 8 or 9 or 10 of us, we walk down the street. And Philadelphia is a closed-in city where people walk out, what they call row houses. He said they look out the door and they say they slammed their door. They was going to the car. They walk back in the house. They drive off quick. We do have a problem with that. And the stress of those kids being disliked and not wanting to be talked to. And I've talked to many of my other gangsters, I guess that's what they are, people that I asked so I've been practicing so long, I now represent the fathers, I represent the kids too. And then I said, well, why don't you talk to those kids? I don't talk to them kids because they're going to say something. Let me straight. The one thing that stood out to me, that when I was talking to my YN, is he said, black men will not talk to us. He said black women sometimes they all wear the mask, and it's like they have a national uniform. They have the hoodie. Hot as they don't care, 90, 100 degrees, and they're gonna wear the hoodie, the glasses, and the mask. And he said women have come up to us and say, yo, son, take that stuff off. It's hot out here. Ain't you hot? And but he said black men will not approach them, will not say nothing to them. Matter of fact, look the other way. And they read people real well. I was riding down the street with him. He said, and this is why I'm saying the stress. I said, are those YNs? He said, no, because I was looking at them and they didn't tense up. They were YNs, they be reaching. I said, is it that bad? Another thing he told me. So these are the type of things that he told me. I said, what does it take to get y'all to fight? And now I've not only talked to I talked to all these young people. I said, what does it take to get y'all to fight? They say, not much.
Yeah. I mean,
so that it's the stress.
Right.
That can you imagine living under that type of stress 24/7? Now that's the YN stress. I ain't gonna talk about the stress that America puts on everybody black,
Right.
So that mental health thing is really, I'm stressed.
It's crucially
Anthony
important.
Beverly keeps me stressed.
Well, and the point about black men talking to these younger black men, incredibly important. That's what we do at Fathers and Families.
Oh yeah, y'all deal with that.
The fathers can be as young as 16. So 16. To 160, maybe some Abrahams out there, but 16 and up, we deal with fathers. But another topic: economic stability as violence prevention. Right. So 2,000 years ago, there's a Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius. If you saw the movie Gladiator, the Roman emperor in there, that was Marcus Aurelius. He wrote a book. we don't know what he called it, but meditations. And one of the things that he talks about is the link between poverty and, this is 2,000 years ago, not here in America, it's 2,000 years ago. He's talking about the link between poverty and crime, right? So, Brother Johnson, you talk a lot about building legacy wealth, the importance of building wealth. How can that help us prevent more violence?
Sure. There's a couple things that wealth does for you. First, it gives you a means of education. So education in America, particularly in America, is a resource. And it is a scarce resource if you look at how expensive it is to get it, right? Now, everything that you need to know, you can probably learn from your cell phone. You can get classes, take courses, but to get the degree that is so coveted to get into the corporate world, you have to go get it, and you have to pay for it, and it's hugely expensive. Mm-hmm. And it's that way for a reason, because that makes it prohibitive. Mm-hmm. It keeps everyone from having it. If everyone had a degree, then the degree would not be worth anything, right? So because that's the way capitalism works, that we're all fighting for resources. Money's a resource. Mm-hmm. We talked about it in the finance part, right? And America goes to war over resources, oil, jewels, and chemicals, and elements, right? We'll go bomb a whole nation for that resource, because that is truly, when you understand how economics work in a capitalistic society, you see how evil the system really is, in that everyone is fighting for scarce resources. We all have unlimited wants and desires to get wealthy or to have things that we need, and there's barriers to getting that. Mm. And because of that, you do create crime. Mm. Crime is a creation of that. And I know that if I can tell a kid that having big rims and a nice car is what it looks like to make it, guess what they're going to do? That's what they're going to go get. Yeah. Right? If I can tell them that having the financial freedom to make sure you have food on your table every night and take care of a family and a household, if that's what you're taught, you're going to find a way to get it. My mother's in the audience today, and she taught me budgeting.
Where's your mom?
Right there in the purple, right there. I don't go anywhere, and she's here, and my wife is in the audience in the turquoise right there. They follow me. But so she told me about budgeting. She said, son, I bought my house on a McDonald's budget. Mm. So if I ever lost my job, and she had a good job, she's a master's degree, very intelligent woman, taught me what I know. She said, but I purchased a home so that I'll never have to beg or borrow from anyone, because I can always go get a job at McDonald's and take care of my basic needs. Wow. And so that gap and how we create that stability, why wealth does that, it creates a safety net. Mm. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, until you're out of that rat race, until you're out of that safety mode, you can't think about anything else. We got to get our community out of that I need safety right now, safety and security. I'm fighting like rats for this security. If we can do that, and it's going to take businesses. Ed Bradley did a story called Throwaway People out of Washington, D.C., and he showed when the black community ran to the white community once they were able to move out of their neighborhoods, how the blacks that moved out there, first of all, they didn't fare well over the generation, 2 or 3 generations, but the community they left behind were the throwaway people that didn't have the wherewithal, the ones that could have worked at Mr. Johnson's store, the ones that could have worked in different stores, and integration did that. But before integration, whenever we grouped together and started building economic empowerment and black folks started to excel, they came in and they just took it. Mm-hmm. We always talk about Black Wall Street, but North Dallas was worse than Black Wall Street. There's a whole museum dedicated to it. It's called the Freedmen's Cemetery. Because after they took all the business, the power company, the light company, the gas company that we all had, the funeral homes, the churches, the grocery stores, the last thing that was left was the cemetery. And guess what? They wanted that land too, so they dug the bodies up and put them in a museum and called it the Freedmen Museum. And now Dallas, the big city of Dallas, sits on top of that. So we have to realize that economics put us in that situation where Dallas now, if you go to that area, is a red light district in Dallas. Economics is directly tied to violence prevention. And we need businesses and non-for-profits to help foster the economic growth in our communities. If we can do that and we can foster the right education and a system to protect it, the Black community becomes a force to be reckoned with in the world.
You know, history is just so important. Today, there's a lot of pushback about reparations and all that. And you hear a lot of people say, well, you know, slavery ended 150 years ago. You know, first of all, discrimination didn't end when slavery ended, first of all, right? So we see what happens in Dallas and Tulsa and Rosewood and Florida and all that. You take away the money and our ability to earn and to enhance our lives. And then, you know, they also will say, well, you know, all the people, there are no slaves alive today. The last living survivor of the Tulsa race, wasn't a race riot, it was a race massacre. The last surviving member of the Tulsa race massacre died, I think she was 103. Still didn't give her a dime. It had nothing to do with whether anyone is living. You didn't want to give them the money while they had to go to court for years and years and years, only to be told, no, we're not going to give you any money, even though we know we were guilty. But we have to understand our history. Mr. Elmore, criminal legal system.
Before we,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say,
Yeah.
I got a question to ask you.
Yes, sir.
And it deals with drugs and the economy and money. Has there been anybody that has taken the money, the impact of drug money, and studied how those guys that utilize their drug money into the economy? I know in Philadelphia, it used to be, and I watched it grow. Drug dealers it was about how much glitter they could have around their neck. And as they grew a little smarter, and the gold around their neck, the car they drove. Then it started developing to how many houses you own. Because I remember I got a lot of my clients, former young boys from the street, they all now talk about he owns 15 houses. Drug money is real.
Yes.
It is always impacted our community. Has anybody attempted, has there been any studies, I know you deal with economics, has there been any studies out here about, number one, the drug money impact upon our community and how we could better utilize it? Because it's not, I hate to say it's not going anywhere. Now it's marijuana. Years ago it was crack. And before that was heroin, and it's going. It's just a recycling of it. But what has anybody done anything to say? Yeah, we know y'all doing wrong, but this is what, if you were smart, you should do this with that money in terms of bettering our community. Because I'm a product somewhat of that, you know. And I tell all the people, a lot of these young upcoming professionals and riding around and having money, living in $1 million homes, they don't understand a lot of that comes from numbers running. And the parents being, not their great-grandparents being hustlers. As you know, then the number of people, the numbers people were leaders in our community, buried people. So what about this new day, all this marijuana money that they bringing in? And the government wants to get involved, and it's so large that the government's talking about we need to legalize it federally so we can get the tax money on that marijuana. Because these kids, I think they strung out on this weed myself.
So what do you think? Yeah.
So I tell you what, there are some lessons being told by some of these young rappers before the YNs. There was that goon culture where they would where they were goons. They were goon culture where they actually rejected everything that was Americanized. Tatted up, wear my pants hanging down, rebelling against the system. And now you see some of those rappers, the Jay-Z's, the Kevin Gates, the ones that are talking about get you some real estate, the Master P's. You know, I'm not a big follower of rap, but I listen to old school rap. And then when I hear these young guys say, hey, Cliff, listen to this. This guy's telling us how to get money and what to do with our money. Because I remember a drug dealer here in the city that used to fund the police football league at times.
Powell Club, yeah.
The Powell Club, right? He ended up getting killed. But literally they were using their money because they still had a culture and love for their community. But there are some that are teaching that now, and I'll say that they're teaching the youth that real estate is a way of doing it, getting properties, getting rental properties. I have clients that have tons of property that, hey, I used to be in the game. I'm legitimate now. So I think every young person, I don't think anyone really wants to stay in that grimy environment. It's just they see it as a way out, and that money is real. If Oliver North and Ronald Reagan can testify in front of the Senate, and Ronald acts like he can't remember anything, and Oliver North basically says, well, I don't necessarily recall, but they funded an Iran-Contra war with drug money from South Central LA.
Yep.
That is real money.
Yep.
And it's millions and millions of dollars, but we've lost our leadership structure that could take that and channel it, because the young kids aren't going to talk to the older guys. Like you said, they're not going to, and when they do come, they don't want to be rejected. Hey, yeah, I might have done this and I've done this wrong. And I made some mistakes, but I still got this real money. What do I do with it? And at some point we have to let them know how to deal with it. And I hate to say it, but that's a reality. And we can't underestimate what happened to the Italians and other people who were marginalized, and how they took that money and parlayed it and actually put some morals behind it.
Right. Did some good out of the bad. Fortunately, our community here is rich with a lot of folks, including we've got Dr. Virgil Gregory back here, a scholar. So maybe you can talk to him afterwards about some of the research.
No, I heard something about what's his specialty?
Dr. Virgil? Your specialty?
What are your specialty? Okay.
Yeah, so
that's definitely the special.
Got some. So we got some great resources here. But the criminal legal, I like the way the question is written here, because I don't use the phrase criminal justice system. It is not just. It is a criminal legal system. So you are our resident attorney here. Obviously, generally speaking, black folks don't trust the system. What are some of the ways or some of the things that our government officials or judicial officials and so on, what can they do to rebuild our trust in the system?
Treat us fairly. That's all black people ever want. When you go in the courtroom, you don't, they just want to be treated fair. The most popular judges in Philadelphia are those in the criminal that just give you a fair chance. But the system is so built, and our people, I hate to say this, but we become some of our, I don't know what happens with us when we get a role, but we get in a position of authority. We just go nuts because we can talk to us in a negative way. We used to white folks doing it, but now you got black judges. Not one in particular. I know I worked hard on his campaign and so he could be a judge. And he said, I'm going to be fair. And now he's one of the worst judges. And black people hate that this is so disrespectful to our people. But a lot of us just, I don't know. Is
he related to Clarence Thomas?
I don't know what's going on.
Is he related to Clarence Thomas?
No, but no. And Giovanni Campbell told me, and I worked diligently. I had other people at my house. We had a phone bank at my house calling people to vote for him and some other judges. And they got on the bench and, act like we don't exist. But the thing that black or white, all our people want to do is get a little bit of fairness. That's all. Just treat them with dignity and respect and fairness. And they'll have confidence. They don't expect to win because they know they've done. You cook, Nick. I mean, you cook, brother. And you're going to, you lost. Ain't not nothing you can do. You cook. So, but do you send him away to jail do you warehouse him? Or do you just be fair and say, he made a mistake, after a while, but then times, you got them that make five, they keep making this mistake, and, but again, it's the way we have to look at crime and how we view crime.
Right.
And I think one of the things is that, and we don't put enough emphasis on it, is how crime is designed to keep perpetuating itself.
No doubt.
Yes.
And to keep the money, keep people working. Like they arrested a whole family of women, and the two brothers was fighting. Y'all ever heard, this is a real line, I'm gonna be real quick. I just came down, when I left town, I was dealing with this. Thanksgiving fight, with family. Brothers get to fight and other people get involved. They arrest the whole family. And they know it's not gonna go anywhere in the courts because they're not gonna come to court. They're not gonna testify against each other. But they still put them in, put the whole family, lock them up. And because of the bail, it generates bail, gives police time, so that's why it's all about that. And my three main things, if I can get something across, I want to get this across. Crime is about money. People work, keep people working. It is about fear. Keep the people in our communities and not only in our community, but to keep the world in fear. And they all fear us as black men. And it allows them to disrupt our communities at will. Like you see the brothers they're not doing anything, but you can pull up and disturb that relationship they have on that corner and lock somebody up, and then it disrupts things.
Yeah.
So those are my three things: money, fear, and disruption. And that's why we have crime, and that's why I'm advocating my not guilty thing, because that's the only way you can. An adequate response. You can't get any. You can't find nobody guilty of that particular thing, because we see it as a people, and in the communities around the country. A good example of this is what the Trump administration did with ICE. They go out here and we're going to arrest people for blockading, interrupting, being interference of ICE agents. They make those arrests, but they don't get any guilty verdicts because that community says no. It's called jury nullification, but that's what the people in Minnesota, they're not going to get any convictions in Minnesota. Now, if the government had their way and everybody that they run the judges and everything, but the juries have made a decision. The people in the community that make up juries have made a decision. That's not what we consider a crime, fighting for the rights of people, and we're not going to criminalize them. So that's the not guilty thing. But let's move on.
Go ahead.
I do have a question on that, because with the criminal justice system, if we stuck together, because crime is relative to whatever environment you're in, what's criminal, what's not. Like you said, in Minnesota, they're not going to get any convictions.
Right.
How can we as a community stick together and say, we understand this systemic system that put our brothers in this situation? How can we, from working from the inside out, help reform that system?
Who's on?
Someone said it. We. Yeah. How can we do it? Yeah.
Oh, that's what he was saying. How do we, as black people?
Yes.
All right. Number one, we see, and I don't think we understand the importance of our unity.
Okay.
The black people's unity, this unity, is extremely important, not only in America but around this world. We still, black people of our skin color, still basically can and could control a great deal of wealth, and they can only do that by being unified. I've looked at this criminal justice system, and I see if there was unity, there'd be very little crime. They'd have very little opportunity to have the domestic, the sell drugs to each other, all of that, if we had unity. So therefore, crime also is about the disunity of our community. People just don't understand how important crime is to this country. Crime is major to this country, and it's major to our community. Really, we move because of crime. We do everything because of this, and we don't think it plays the part that it does. But crime is such a burden and such a drastic resource drain on our community. And like I said, AI, they say America cannot economically move forward without crime. So, but I say the way we do it, if we get together, if we push unity, there was a brief period in American history that I think that was the late 60s where you could actually walk down the street. And I was a kid in the 60s. You would walk down the street and you see a black brother and you say, "Hey, black power." You know, that was reality. You know, he said black power, and that was a thing. All of us wanted to be, a lot of us wanted to be black power advocates. That's why I got in it. Unity is the biggest fear. And if we had more unity, we wouldn't have the crime, and we need to stress that more. But I'm finding resistance from people. I said, well, why don't you just buy shirts on Unity, call it Unity Friday. All the young black men in Philadelphia, they wear a shirt called Black Men United on Friday or whatever. Just buy them that shirt. You know, I'm getting that type of resistance. Nobody wants us together. None of the Europeans, none of those countries, nobody, because of our enormous wealth connect. You know, with 40 million more in that in this country. Miss Williams, it was telling me about, they didn't even let us, and Miss Williams, I couldn't hardly get my birth certificate. They wouldn't accept it because it was the original, because it didn't come from the department. But like Miss Williams said, she's one of the first ones in her family. What year were you? We don't have to ask that. First person to be born in a hospital in her family. We as black people, there's a lot more of us than what y'all think it is, because they didn't keep records. We were not allowed to be born in hospitals. They didn't let us be born in hospitals in a lot of children. So look and think about that.
Right.
They didn't keep no real good records. And if as Miss Williams telling me, if the midwife didn't take it down and take it to the Board of Health, the Department of Health, there was no record of that. Am I right, Miss Williams? There'd be no record. And Miss Williams is 90, so she knows. And they tell us what our numbers are. They know what they did. They understand. The system understands this. But can you imagine if there's 10 or 15, 20 million more African Americans in this country than they thought there were? The amount of power, economic power,
The unity question. I think that answers the unity answer. I think answers our last question, which is around solutions. Right. We want to make sure that we are solution oriented. I mean, the unity, I just think is crucial. I mean, if you look at El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz, better known as Malcolm X, murdered, assassinated in 1965. Why? Because his view begins to broaden. He's not just talking about black folk. He's talking about global oppression. Dr. King, right? Moved from Negroes to poor people's marches. Got to get them out.
Vietnam.
Right? Vietnam and all that. So when we talk about unity, powerful force. But we are just about at time. So thank you for your attention as an audience. Really, really appreciate all the work that you all do. Recognize he's going to sit up. Pastor Janelle back there with Evolve, works with our youth and so on. So a lot of people in this room are not just walking the talk, but not just talking the talk, but walking the talk as well.
Well, you've done a good job.
God bless you. Appreciate you.
Both of y'all, really, I'm impressed.
Yeah, we're going to wrap up here real quick, but we do want to get to one of the things I really wanted you all to drive home was solutions.
Okay.
So give us one solution. Inyo, take 30 seconds. How do we move these young guys from the gun violence?
Talk unity. Emphasize it. Let it be everywhere. With posters, sweatshirts, everything. Unity, black unity, unity. It needs to be drilled, like they say, repetition. It helps put something in their head and define, but black people, seriously, we've never been unified because of slavery. We don't really understand what unity is because they made sure we didn't have it, and understand how safe it is when you have unity in a community.
I'll say education. We've talked about this. Carter G. Woodson wrote a book the miseducation of the Negro, right? So this brilliant brother, second black man to earn 200 PhD from Harvard after W.E.B. Du Bois, but understood. We talked about earlier about teaching ourselves to read and all that, but we have to educate ourselves, educate our children, so we understand what our history is, because really, it's cliche, but if we don't know what our history is, it's hard to determine what our future is. So educate, so unity, education, and
The one thing I would say, I agree 100%. Unity is by locale, proximity. We have to be close to each other. And with that, the most important thing we can do right now with our unity is to educate our children ourselves. That unity, we can't teach some of the older folks that have moved away, won't come back. The young kids are scared of them. We need to be close to each other. Being from Forest, Mississippi, and seeing my family down there versus the family up here, there's a distinct difference of what unity looks like to them versus to us up here. So proximity, we need to be in the same locale, and we need to educate our children ourselves. That's the first and most important thing that we can do. The miseducation of the Negro with Carter G. Woodson, Malcolm X, tying it all together, talked about our unity is more powerful than an atomic or a nuclear bomb, but we have to be next to each other. We can't be separated. And we talked about, power without a man conceives nothing, but he said, as far as our unity, we're like fingers when it comes to most things, but when it comes to our unity, we need to be like a fist all tied together. And that means we have to be close to each other. So.
Good deal. So when you talk about being close to each other, Cliff, we live in a global economy. We live in a global world, and everything is so instantaneous across social media. Talk a little bit more about what it means to be close.
What it means to be close is like-minded individuals working together on the same path. We're all a part of the African diaspora, whether we accept it or not. How many of us look at what's going on? How many of us understand that America actually tried to derail that with the killing of Gaddafi, right? We separate ourselves from that because we've been taught rugged individualism, to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and to not work together. In our economic meeting, we talked about, we didn't get to it because we got cut short, but most businesses to this day that we admire and we look at are family-run businesses. They're unified based off their bloodline. When we talk about wealth generation and all that, the Amish, communal wealth, but also individual wealth, some of the communities, and they work together. They keep outsiders out. So that's what I mean by unity. Sometimes you have to keep outsiders out. Don't let them into your organization. Don't let them interfere because they are disruptors.